Well, Professor Fisher, I've been sitting inside for 62 days without much sunlight. The only thing that has prepared me for this was 2 semesters with you in the dungeons of the Colosseum. This actually is nice. You told me many things in all seriousness. One, that as my friends played in the snow outside during a rare Columbia snowstorm, you would be the only professor to have class on the entire campus, having it online. That 50 points and a failing grade could be assigned for 1 spelling error in a paper. And that I could edit the Daily Gamecock at night, and then you could edit again in front of class the next morning at 8 a.m. in the most humiliating fashion possible.
There was girls crying everywhere.
Men
girls
crying.
Men crying too. Us crying.
Yeah.
Girl talking about how all she did was spell from wrong and autocorrect didn't catch it. And now she got an F on her paper. It was the Doug support group.
Yeah, and we actually met there and became roommates from it. And I
held
remember,
hands the whole time. And
there's this pit in my stomach that's never truly left. I don't know if it's a stomach ulcer or what from Doug's class, where you really have to double check yourself to make sure, does I-26 really run through South Carolina every time you write it in the story?
I spent a summer hiding from Professor Fisher. It was 2006, and I was news editor for that summer's Gamecock. And once a week, I would make that long hike across campus to descend into the basement of the Coliseum for a journalism class. It wasn't Professor Fisher's class, but he came to loom over the Coliseum for me in those weeks. At the time, it seemed like something straight out of a horror movie, a nerdy journalism horror film filled with red ink. I would quietly creep through the long circular hallways as the old fluorescent lights flickered overhead. I would try to guess if the shadow approaching me in the opposite direction was the professor, and breathe a sigh of relief every time it wasn't. And each week, Professor Fisher would appear out of nowhere. He would emerge with perfect timing out of a neighboring classroom, or his voice would beckon from somewhere behind me. He would call me into his office or a nearby lab. He would flatten a copy of that week's Gamecock on a table and slash away. Nothing was safe, from the front page articles to the last few inches of copy buried inside.
When I heard that I would be Doug Fisher's graduate assistant back in 2006, I'll admit I was a little intimidated. I had taken copy editing as an undergraduate student, and it was the class that I struggled with a lot. I passed my first time, but I didn't get the grades I was used to getting, and it was intimidating for me then, so going into as a grad student had its own level of intimidation. But I can honestly say that nothing prepared me for the workforce so much as working in that position.
One thing Doug said a lot to our class was, if you're not mad, you're not paying attention. And we were all kind of malcontents to begin with. I think that's why a lot of us got into journalism. But Doug really instilled that as a value. And over the years, I think that stuck with me more than almost anything else from journalism school. Just the value of relentless skepticism. And I think that served me well. And I'm still mad. Thanks, Doug.
You hear about Doug Fisher before you ever see him. And what you hear is that he's big, he's ornery, and he wants to take you and your dreams and put them in the ground. He doesn't smile, his office is like a cave, and he talks about commas like they're his children. If you mix up there, or there, you're dead to him. You do not want to make that mistake. Why do you hate joy, Doug? I'm 20 years old. I just want you to tell me I've got this and assure me I'll coast my way to the Washington Post someday. But if you get Doug, if you survive Doug, you learn he's a little bit like journalism itself. Kind of brutal, unapologetic, maybe a little unforgiving.
I was a student in Doug Fisher's public affairs reporting class and the editor-in-chief of the Daily Gamecock. Now, being a daily newspaper, we had no shortage of stories that we published that were worthy of the critique of the journalism school's top editor. But there was one in particular that led to a pretty great confrontation between me and Doug. It got back to me that the story had been held up in front of 2 successive journalism classes, and the criticism had devolved from a criticism of the reporting to a criticism of the person, the reporter. I brought it to his attention that I did not feel it was appropriate for him and his class, many of whom did not ever work for the Daily Gamecock, to be criticizing a member of my staff. The reporting is fair game, but the staff members themselves, I thought, were off the table. And Doug disagreed with me. He said that that was fair game. We're a professional newspaper. We sell ads. We hold ourselves up as professionals and compete with the state. He said that we should take that responsibility and be willing to take that criticism. I did not take kindly to this response and snapped a little bit and said something that maybe I shouldn't have. I wanted to call him but instead I called him immature. At which point he wheeled around and said right back to me without missing a beat, "Thank you for questioning my maturity, Mr. Campbell. I'll keep that in mind next time you fall asleep in my 532 class."
Doug definitely put us through the ringer. I actually developed a series of nightmares in which I was falling way behind on projects, or I gotten something terribly wrong, due in part to Doug's habit of turning in and letting us know our grades anywhere between 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. each night. I would barely get any sleep because I would be on pins and needles waiting for those emails to come in. Anytime my phone buzzed in the middle of the night, I would shoot awake and check and see if it was an email from Doug, because I just knew once that came in, all that red ink that was going to be on those assignments, those stories, it was going to be a lot more work for me. It was going to change my life over the next couple days or weeks. So those nightmares ended about a year after I graduated, but definitely the lessons that I took from all those classes and all the things that Doug taught us and all the challenges that he gave us have lasted well beyond that. I know I wouldn't be where I am today without Doug. So Doug, I appreciate it. Congratulations on retirement. You've earned it, man.
I also learned a great deal about accuracy and precision, and to this day I still get comments from editors thanking me for how clean my copy is when I submit it. And I think I have him to thank for that after all the years going back and forth on different articles. And while committing all those acronyms to memory back in 2003 as a sophomore did seem unhelpful at the time, I will admit that knowing what SCUBA stands for has come in handy many times at trivia. And I know that Fisher and his classes have a bit of reputation around the journalism school, but I think it's one that's well earned. I think that he has high expectations for his students because he understands from his own career what it takes to succeed. So I just wanted to say thank you, Professor Fisher, and happy retirement.
Doug and I met in his office and apologized to each other for losing our tempers, especially in such a public manner. But I don't regret what happened. I learned a lot from Doug in his class, but also I think I learned in this scenario to stick up for my staff and that my passion for the newspaper actually was a positive. He really, I think I earned his respect after that for being willing to go and confront one of the most terrifying journalism professors in the country with a grievance that I thought was legitimate, and I think he really respected that.
Professor Fisher set high standards, and he expected you to meet them. Whether you were turning in a classroom assignment, writing for the summer Gamecock, or working in a newsroom far from the bowels of the Coliseum. Those standards stayed with me, no matter if I was reporting from a small county courthouse or a combat outpost in Afghanistan. That's the legacy that Professor Fisher is leaving behind. An example for a generation of Gamecock journalists, and a purveyor of high standards whose impact will last far longer than the days he stalked the hallways of the J School looking for scared student journalists. Congratulations on your retirement, Professor, and thanks for everything.
No moment changed my life like Doug challenging me to take the Dow Jones copy editing internship test. If he thought I could ace it, maybe I really could. So I studied my style book, asked him for advice, and when I got that call that I was a Dow Jones intern, nobody was happier for me than Doug. He might have actually smiled. I needed a Doug Fisher to succeed in this moody, unrelenting, kind of a jerk of a business. Now that I actually do work for the Washington Post and I'm about to publish my second book, I believe taking copy editing and not dropping it was the big bang moment of my career. Doug was just honest, and he wanted ambitious and smart people to prove it. And through college, I started calling him Coach because that's what he was to me. I work at one of the best newspapers in America because of Doug. I have this crazy, fulfilling, unpredictable life because of Doug. I am a journalist because of Doug. It's true. And I just want to say thank you, big fella, for being what you were, to me and so many others. We needed it. We needed you. Congratulations, Coach. And cheers to a meaningful career, the lives you changed, and to whatever lies ahead. Lay ahead? Lie ahead?